As a kid, life was always changing due to my father's military career. We moved frequently, each new base offering a fresh start, but never a permanent home. This lifestyle made me resilient and adaptable, but also yearned for stability and a place of my own. I remember deciding to open my own business, somewhere to plant roots and build something lasting. After college, with degrees in Arabic and computer science, I enlisted in the Army. My language skills got me a job as a translator in volatile Middle Eastern regions. During this time, I developed an interest in security technology, recognizing its importance for personal and national safety. This experience shaped my post-military career, combining my technical skills with a mission to create a secure environment. After leaving the military, I aimed to open a computer and security equipment store in the Chicago suburbs. I wanted a spot between two Best Buy stores and near a busy shopping center. On the second day of searching, I found the perfect place with a "For Rent" sign. As I looked into the dark, vacant store, the door swung open, startling me. Two women emerged, laughing at my reaction. "Sorry to scare you," one said. "We didn't expect a peeping Tom in broad daylight." "Sorry, it was a reflex. If I had an M4 rifle, I'd have put holes in you. I'd hate to hurt two nice ladies." "You must be military, not SWAT." "Too jumpy," the taller woman joked. "Looking to rent?" asked the shorter woman. "Yes. Is this space available?" "I'm Carol Hughes, leasing agent. This is Susan Parker, our banker." Carol shook my hand firmly. "Nice to meet you. I'm Bob," Susan replied. "Rent might be out of my budget." "I'm confirming the lease to update our credit files," Carol said. "When occupancy is high enough, we'll lower the loan interest rate." "How much is the rent?" $1,200 a month plus electricity," Carol answered. I asked Susan, "What's the minimum lease term?" 6 months or more," she replied. "Carol, I'll pay $1,000 a month for a year up front. Can you do that?" Carol quickly accepted my offer and turned to Susan. "He might be a good bank customer for you." "Here's my card," Susan said, looking me over. Carol went to do the paperwork, and I offered to take Susan to the bank, suggesting lunch afterward. She agreed, impressed by my Corvette. "Do you have time for lunch?" I asked. "Yes," she smiled. "Great. Why don't you drive us somewhere nice?" I handed her the keys, and she looked surprised. "I've never driven a manual before." "I'll teach you," I said. She slid into the driver's seat, focused on the gears. After some practice, she drove us to lunch, concentrating on shifting while I stayed calm despite the grinding noises. When we arrived at a nice Italian restaurant, she asked, "What have you been up to the last 2 years that made you so jumpy when those women came out of the store?" "I spent the last 2 years in the Middle East as a U.S. Army infantryman. There, when an unfamiliar door opens, you better be ready to shoot or die. Since I didn't have my rifle, I was ready to throw my pen at you," I said with a grin, making Susan laugh. "Why did you join the Army and go to such a dangerous place?" "A little history. I'm the son of a U.S. Army colonel and an Iranian nurse. They met when my dad was working on radio intercepts in Iran before the Shah was overthrown. They got married, I was born, and I spent my first 18 years as an Army brat. I went to college and earned degrees in Arabic and computer science. With a sense of patriotism and wanderlust, I joined the Army and became an infantryman. My language skills got me assigned as a translator in action zones." "Was it as exciting as you thought? Did you get shot at?" "It was more interesting than I expected. Yes, I was shot once. Maybe after our third date, I'll show you my scars." Smiling, she replied, "Third date? Do I get a say?" "If you want to see them on the second date, I can set aside my modesty," I said with a grin. We had a great lunch, and she insisted on paying, saying, "It's on the bank. I'm always looking for good customers." As we drove to the bank, she said, "The girls will be jealous when I drive up in this. Then give them a show. Get out, show some leg, and toss me the keys." She did so with flair, waving as she went into the bank. After a few minutes, I called her cell. "What time should I pick you up for dinner on Saturday?" I asked. "Who is this? A guy gives a girl a ride in his Corvette, and she forgets him already," she replied. "Bob, I didn't recognize your voice. 7 p.m. works for me. Dress nicely. I'll be dazzling," she added. Saturday night couldn't come soon enough. "You look dazzling, Susan. All the guys at the VFW will love seeing you," I complimented her. "If you take me to the VFW, I'll never see your battle scars," she teased. "I can show them to you on the second or third date," I suggested. "No second or third date if you take me there tonight," she laughed. "I have reservations at Capitol Grill for a steak dinner if that works," I offered. "I like it. Do we have time for a glass of wine first?" she asked. "Sure, I'd love to see how a successful banker lives," I responded. "Welcome to my cozy apartment," she said, laughing. I'm successful, but at entry level, I'm aiming higher. I bought this place 2 years ago, but if rent goes up, I might not afford it, so I'm not investing much in renovations. I noticed a diploma from Northwestern University. What's your major? Business? I inquired. Finance, she replied. That fits your career as a banker, I observed. Yes, but I'd rather borrow money to be a real estate developer. A few years of financing real estate projects is a great way to learn, she explained. We talked about her college years and future plans, then headed to dinner. The evening was perfect with great conversation, food, and drinks. How did your computer skills come into play in the military? She asked. My first combat mission in Mosul changed my duties. We raided an Iraqi fighter's house and found some computers that my comrades were about to destroy. I stopped them, insisting we take them to the intelligence officer. I handed the computers and documents to the G2 officer, who laughed and said, "What are we going to do with this electronic garbage if we can't operate an Arab computer?" I responded, "Besides being an interpreter, I can operate a computer in Arabic, sir." After that, I was sent to the brigade intelligence officer. For hours, I worked at a desk, watched by high-ranking officers. Suddenly, I realized we were under imminent threat. Tomorrow at 0200 hours, we will face a three-pronged attack. This letter outlines their battle plan. Get me a map, and I'll show you their directions. The decision-makers in the room planned airstrikes and artillery fire, maintaining secrecy as spies and informers could be among us. Only the company commander and above knew of the attack, until our Air Force struck first. Then we all rushed to our fighting positions. The rest of the report detailed weapon hideouts and attack plans. I soon found myself assigned to a different unit, working with confiscated computers and finding crucial information like insurgent bank records. The funds moved through numbered accounts, likely for weapons, food, bribes, and salaries. I felt it was my duty to disrupt their access to these funds. I had the necessary information to transfer the money to any bank, but knew only one account number, my own in Chicago. Using my personal laptop, I transferred the money to my bank, ensuring the enemy couldn't use it against us. Realizing the risk, I quickly transferred the funds to a numbered account in Switzerland, making it untraceable. This method made the money trail less visible than through an army computer. Due to security clearance protocols, I didn't inform Susan of this income source. I continued. That's why I titled my book, How I Defeated the Rebels While Sitting at My Computer Desk. It's quite the story. You're an interesting person. How did you get injured at your computer? Carpal tunnel? She joked with a smile. Sorry, I don't show wounds until the second date. I can do that. Let's dance, and I'll whisper a top-secret story to you. Laughing, we drove my Corvette to a club and spent a couple of hours there. When I pulled up to her apartment, she asked, "Would you like to come in?" "Yeah, I'd like that," I said. After a few glasses of wine, I decided to leave. "Was this date good enough for another one?" I asked. "Yes, I need a second date to see the wound," she replied. "Okay, I'll call you," I promised. "You're not leaving without a reward for a great evening?" She hugged me, rubbing my shirt, then gave me a warm, wet kiss. This prompted me to call her soon. On our second date, we had dinner and enjoyed a jazz concert. She asked, "Will you show me your war wounds during intermission?" "No, can I wait until we get to your apartment?" I replied. "Sure. Did you get a Purple Heart?" she inquired. She seemed doubtful, so I showed her a picture on my phone of me in uniform with the Purple Heart. At her house, I took a briefcase from the glove compartment. "Are you proposing tonight?" she asked. Smiling, I said, "No, that's for date number 6. This is my Purple Heart. Open it and see my name and wound details." She opened the box and read, "Shell fragment in the eye." "Right. Notice the scar on my eyelid," I pointed out. "How did it happen?" she asked. "I was making an omelet when a bad egg exploded, shooting me in the eye. The medical report said eggshell shard in eye, so I got a Purple Heart," I explained. She laughed, and after talking for a few hours, we became closer. Weeks later, I hired Betty Black as my office manager. She was older, attractive, married to a police officer, and had been laid off from Best Buy despite her extensive knowledge. She said her manager thought she was too old for their target market. I hired her, and we were both happy. Susan and I spent more time together, and life was great, until 2 men from the CIA showed up. They showed their badges and wanted to talk. I feared what they could accuse me of. They asked why there were never any facilities around captured enemy offices. I just stared, experiencing my first froth attack in years. They didn't accuse me of anything, just mentioned that recent hacks of rebel computers revealed complaints about an American looting their bank accounts. They waited for my response, so I shrugged. Then came the surprise. They wanted me to work for them as a private contractor, paying me $20,000 a month. The first $500,000 of any funds confiscated from the rebels would stay with me. The rest would go to the CIA. They found me the most efficient at hacking enemy computers and believed I could recover more from the Iranians than they were paying me, plus my bonus. The implication was clear. If I didn't comply, they might investigate who was releasing insurgent funds. By the time I finished my tour in Iraq, I had over $1 million in Swiss bank accounts and $300,000 in a Chicago bank account. The CIA wanted me to keep attacking the insurgents' bank accounts. The only reason I didn't sign up immediately was my growing relationship with Susan. However, she saw the $20,000 monthly paycheck as too good to pass up. I didn't mention the bonus program to her. Since she needed to move out of her apartment, she moved in with me. I wired my apartment with security equipment to monitor it remotely and offered Susan the use of it while I covered all the bills. When I returned to the Middle East, I planned to spend 3 months there and 3 months in the States to avoid burnout and maintain my relationship with Susan. My first stop was a meeting at Langley with the CIA officers. They saw me as an asset worth more than a computer but less than a carnivore drone. They had simple rules. If I screwed up, the deal was off. If someone died because of me, they could liquidate me or take all the funds I had released. It was a long 3 months, filled with work on unexplored computers at the command center. The latest computers provided valuable data for the CIA. I mapped insurgent squad interactions and left some money in accounts as bait. Susan and I communicated daily on FaceTime despite the time difference. Our calls were worth the inconvenience. I also began physical training with the Marines at our compound, joining their morning workouts. Initially, they were wary, but once they learned I was an Army brat working for the CIA, they accepted me. After the first 3-month stint, I met with the senior CIA officer in the country to review my work. He was pleased with the timely information I provided. He didn't ask about the funds I accumulated, and I didn't mention them. He asked, "Do you want to stay for another 3 months or go to the States and then come back?" "I'm heading back to the States to marry the most beautiful woman in Illinois. In 3 months, I'll return to continue my work. In the meantime, I've trained your raiding parties on what to capture when searching for a computer. I've also created a protocol to bypass terrorist defenses and gain remote control, allowing me to access it from Chicago to find the latest information for you." 2 days later, Susan's face lit up like a full moon when I arrived at O'Hare Airport. I had waited 2 months for our relationship to settle, and it felt real. I sent her a bouquet of flowers with a note saying, "You're more beautiful than these flowers. Would you join me for dinner at an exclusive restaurant this Saturday? You might want to buy a new dress." The restaurant was actually a penthouse suite at the Hyatt Hotel, with dinner on the balcony overlooking the city, a string quartet, and her favorite dishes. The bedroom was lined with rose petals. Susan was curious about our destination, but it was a surprise for both of us. We took a limo to the Hyatt, where the concierge greeted us and escorted us to the suite. Susan practically danced through the lobby. People looked at us like celebrities. We had our own waiter, champagne, and enjoyed the city lights. The string quartet played, the dinner was excellent, and the chocolate volcano dessert was perfect. After dessert, I lifted a silver plate cover to reveal a small purple velvet box. Susan was speechless, her hands trembling and tears in her eyes. I got down on one knee and proposed. She started saying yes, but I stopped her to finish my part, then asked, "Will you be my wife?" She replied, "Absolutely." Our wedding was small since neither of us had large families. We flew to Savannah, Georgia to enjoy the Southern charm. Back to our work lives, Susan introduced me to her social circle of realtors and developers. I spent 3 months in the States and 3 months working abroad. On our anniversary, I asked if she knew a realtor who could find us a nice house. She asked, "What kind of house do you want?" I said, "My lovely wife will decide. The only condition is the total cost, including furnishings and remodeling, must not exceed $1 million. She was shocked and worried about affording it, thinking it was a cruel joke. I assured her, "I have investments you don't know about. We can easily afford it. I wanted to make sure you married me for love, not for money." She smiled, called me a prick, and said it would be a cash deal. Susan made a great deal with a divorcing couple who wanted a quick cash sale. While I was away, she managed the remodel, and I kept updated via FaceTime. I requested a top-notch security system with hidden cameras and microphones because I had received a tip that terrorists were angry about their stolen money. I didn't want to be captured by vengeful enemies. I called Betty at the computer store for the best private investigator's name in town. She said, Tom Pappas is one of our best clients, thorough, professional, but not cheap. He buys high-end surveillance equipment from us. Would you like his number? Yes, thank you. The conversation with Mr. Pappas was productive. He knew exactly what I needed and how to install it. Most of the electronic equipment in the house was integrated into my personal computer system, allowing me to control everything remotely. Susan was thrilled with her new home and expressed her love deeply. Without the distractions of dating or a husband away, she focused on building relationships within the local Home Builders Association and growing her loan portfolio at the bank. Starting my 4th year, I noticed changes in how Susan greeted me at the airport. The enthusiastic welcomes turned into complaints about my luggage. The last 2 greetings made me anxious, with her waiting impatiently in the car. Just take an Uber home. I'm busy. After 3 weeks at home, I tried to address the tension. Honey, you seem distracted. Is there something I can help with? Anything bothering you at work? No, I'm fine. This sounded an alarm in my combat-trained mind. A few minutes later, she said, We have nothing in common anymore. You're away for 6 months, and even when you're here, you're always working on your computer. What are you, an Iranian spy? I turned off my computer and gave her my full attention. No, I'm not a spy. My work is for the U.S. Department of Defense. I gather information from terrorists' computers. It's important for our country. Well, that makes you boring and uninteresting, and I don't like it, Susan said. What can I do to be more interesting? I'm open to suggestions, I replied. Knock me off my feet. Make me feel important, she demanded. All right, let's go to Vegas and LA for 2 weeks. No work, just us. You choose the shows and activities, and I'll handle the rest, I suggested. That sounds like a good start. I'll think about it. What do you want to see? She asked. I want to see my wife happy, that's all, I responded. The next morning, I started planning. The Vegas trip was a tactic to understand what was on Susan's mind. Did she have a lover? Who was she spending time with? After lunch, I met with Mr. Pappas and explained my situation. I need your company to monitor my wife's activities. We can install a car tracker on her Audi, and I've already installed a beacon in her cell phone. I'll be out of the country from September 1st to November 30th, but reachable by phone or email. You've installed a sophisticated camera system, and I can share information as needed. There are rumors of a bounty on me from Middle Eastern rebels, and I want to ensure my wife's safety. She doesn't need to know this to avoid frightening her. Also, I want to know if she's having an affair, which could be a way for enemies to get to me. I need to be prepared for any trouble, I explained. Wow, Mr. Pappas said. You know my business protocol well. I'll do my best to meet your expectations. This will be costly, with an upfront payment plus monthly expenses depending on the services performed. I understand. I'll transfer the money for the first month. Thank you for your help, I said. I decided to do my own investigation. I started with Susan's closet, checking every shoebox, lifting the shoe shelf, and inspecting all pockets in her clothes. I found nothing. Then I noticed a small travel bag in the hall closet, secured with a small lock. I opened it with a paperclip and found a set of French underwear, cheap clothes, and shoes that had been washed several times. It was clear she was meeting someone. Next, I checked the hidden cameras and replaced their batteries. In my office, I noticed the top drawer of my file cabinet had screwdriver marks. Someone had gone through my tax returns and investment information, likely preparing for a divorce. My offshore and Swiss bank accounts were safe, but the invasion suggested she was preparing for alimony negotiations. I checked my weapon safe, which was untouched. I decided to invite Susan to dinner. After making reservations, I left her a voicemail and texted her. I placed a new dress on the table for her to wear. At 5 p.m., I took a nap, showered, and dressed in my best suit. By 6:15, with no response from her, I checked her cell tracker. It showed her at a high-end office building near her bank. I arrived at Locky Restaurant and was seated in a secluded area. I ordered a bottle of her favorite wine and tracked her location, which hadn't changed by 7:20. I ordered soup and noticed sympathetic looks from other diners as I sat alone. At 7:30, my phone vibrated. It was Susan. Hi, honey. Please forgive me, Bob. My phone died and I couldn't get my messages, Susan said. I understand, I sighed. Will you come to my place for dinner? This is for you since you said I wasn't attentive enough. Are you still waiting for me? I asked. Yes, Bob. I just finished a great soup and my salad is on the way, she replied. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I'm really sorry, Bob, she added. Great. You'll be here just in time for dessert and drinks, I said. I had just finished a ribeye steak when Susan burst in, out of breath with disheveled hair and a wrinkled blouse. I can't apologize enough, Bob. You were trying to make this night special and I ruined it. "What can I do to make it up to you?" she asked. "Have you eaten yet? If not, order something while I get dessert. Then you can tell me about your day," I suggested. "No, I'm very hungry. I heard they have a great triple chocolate brownie here," she said. "Order that, and a scotch on the rocks," I said. I ordered 2 brownies and asked, "So, how was your day?" It was hectic. We had a problem with the wording on the mortgage for the shopping center on Douglas Street. The bank thought we were mortgaging 2 buildings, but the borrowers thought it was just one, she explained. "Did it take all day?" I asked. "No, it started in the afternoon and went until now," she replied. "Who was involved in these negotiations?" I inquired. "Why all the questions, Bob? It's just another day at work," she said, sounding irritated. "After you didn't return my calls and texts and embarrassed me by not showing up, I think you owe me more than just another work day. Do you think that's overstepping?" I asked, feeling frustrated. "No, it's not out of line, but I don't like being questioned as if I'm hiding something," she retorted. "Are you hiding something or someone from me?" I probed. "No, I'm not," she snapped back. "Then why are you so defensive? I'm just making small talk. Many people ask about their spouse's day, including who they worked with. But if you think I'm invading your privacy, I won't ask anymore. Let's talk about something neutral, like the weather," I suggested, trying to lighten the mood. "Don't be so smart, Bob," she said. "I thought today was warm for this time of year. Did you get to enjoy it?" I asked. "Okay, I'll play your game." "No, I didn't leave the office. They brought us sandwiches, which I hate. That probably ruined my mood and made me grumpy with you." "I'm sorry I snapped at you," she admitted. "That's okay, honey. I love you, grumpy or not," I said, trying to reassure her. The rest of dinner was more relaxed as we discussed weekend plans. However, I sensed she was lying about her day. Checking her phone calls could be revealing. When she went to the bathroom, I checked her phone. It was 75% charged, contradicting her dead phone excuse. At home, she immediately showered, which was unusual unless she had been in the field. On the first day of my investigation, I learned a lot. It was crucial to keep appearing ignorant. In Illinois, infidelity isn't grounds for divorce, so I didn't need proof of her cheating. But irreconcilable differences could justify a divorce. My goal was to protect my assets. While reallocating my portfolio in Switzerland, Susan unexpectedly entered my office. I failed to notice her approach. She asked, "What are you looking at?" I turned and saw her reading my screen from 4 feet away. If I hid it, she'd know I was secretive, so I shifted her attention. "I'm reallocating investments, deciding between Google and Amazon. Any suggestions?" Ignoring the numbers, she said, $3,646,962.44? Is this your money? There's no name, just numbers. Unlike her, I felt the need to be mostly honest. "Yes, this is my bank account in Switzerland. It's money I made trading goods while I was bored in Afghanistan." "Why don't you transfer that money here so I can spend it?" Susan asked. "That money stays there to avoid huge income taxes when brought into the U.S. The $1 million you spent on this house and furnishings was part of that income. It was my gift to you," I explained. "Are there any other accounts outside the U.S. I don't know about?" she inquired. "Yes," I admitted. "How many accounts and how much money?" she pressed. I smiled. "You've used your one honest answer." She got angry but then jumped into my arms. "Great. Keep surprising me. I need a Ferrari and a bigger house," she exclaimed. "Wait, honey, I plan to spend that money on us, but we need a plan. We could blow it now or I could triple it in 2 years. Would you rather have $10 million in 2 years or $3.6 million now? I buy you a new Audi SUV every year and there's more to come. I love you and did this for you," I said. "Yes, I agree," she said with a smile. "Good. I'm off to my next appointment. I just stopped by to pick up some papers. See you tonight, love boy," she said. I was angry at myself for not handling the situation better, but it turned out better than expected. Telling her most of the truth felt good. Maybe our marriage wasn't on the rocks. However, I had to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. I rented a storage unit and moved personal and professional items there, backed up important computer data, and packed clothes for a quick getaway. I didn't want it to seem like I was leaving, just preparing for a strategic withdrawal. The next step was a trip to Langley to see my supervisor. I requested a new identity, explaining that the rebels knew someone was pirating their funds and had put a price on my head. 2 weeks later, I had a new identity, Tyler Connors, with a new passport, driver's license, social security number, and work history. I arranged a buy-sell agreement with Betty Black, transferring all store assets to her, including $50,000 in cash. I explained my concerns to her. Betty, I have a bad feeling about my next trip to the Middle East. If I don't return, all store assets go to you. You're buying assets, not the corporation, so any tax problems fall on the corporation. I'll be moving funds through the corporation as I restructure my finances. The purchase price for you is $50,000. Do you have any questions? I asked. Yes, I do. Why are you doing this for me? She asked. You've been a great friend and business partner doing most of the work while I stayed in the background. But there's a catch. One day, you may be contacted by Tyler Connors. If that happens, do whatever he asks without discussing it with anyone, including your husband. I guarantee you won't be asked to commit a crime. Just do him a favor. He has saved my life several times. Do we understand? I asked. I understand, Bob, but I wish you wouldn't talk like that. It's bad luck. Thank you for thinking of me, but I'd prefer you come back and we continue working together, she said. That's my wish too, but I wanted to ensure you're taken care of if something bad happens to me, I replied. Susan vowed to be a more passionate wife and almost set our mattress on fire. Mr. Pappas found nothing suspicious about her behavior. She often visited a luxury apartment building owned by Silas Cohen, spending hours there. Susan had set aside the last 3 evenings of the following week for a Home Builders Association seminar and convention. She told me she'd be home late each night. I saw the convention materials on the kitchen table and asked about the dance on Saturday night. Yes, a big dress-up party. Best suit or tuxedo for the men and little black dresses for the ladies. There will be a live band and an open bar. I'll probably be home very late. It says spouses are invited. Do you mind if I go with you? You say I need to have more fun. We haven't gone to a dance in a long time. Susan wasn't enthusiastic. You don't know anyone, and I'll be busy developing business relationships. You might have to sit alone for an hour, and you don't like that without a computer. Ignoring her snide remark, I said, You want me to change, so I'm changing. I'm trying to be the kind of husband you want. I informed Mr. Pappas about the party, and he promised to set up equipment to catch every sound near Susan's purse. He also gave me a microphone to record conversations. This would protect me from any misinterpretations. I could turn the recorder on or off with a swipe of my hand in my suit pocket. Susan stayed home late the first 2 nights of the convention. When she got home, she didn't run to the shower but snuggled up to me and said goodnight. Saturday night, I dressed in my best suit and waited in the living room when Susan came downstairs. She looked stunning. You look amazing, my dear. That dress suits you perfectly. Susan wanted to ride in my newest Corvette. The table reserved by her bank had a great view of the catwalk and dance floor. 2 couples were already seated, and I was introduced as Susan's husband. One of the ladies remarked, Susan, I thought you said your husband was a computer nerd. Why are you here with that handsome stud? All eyes turned to Susan for her answer. She smiled and said, Why don't you tell them what you do, Bob? Tell them about your store and your work every 3 months. I own a computer store on Harrison Street and go to the Middle East every 3 months to work on computers for the Army. I don't think that makes me a nerd, Susan. I noticed a tinge of annoyance on her face at my rebuke. Well, you'll always be my favorite computer nerd. Now, get us something to drink while I socialize. She left, and I went to buy a glass of wine for Susan and a beer for myself. The line for free drinks was long, and I found myself at the end. 2 realtor ladies in front of me were chatting. The taller one said, Here comes the most beautiful loan officer in town, fishing out clients with her decoy. Look at that blue dress. She worked hard to get both construction and permanent loans for the new high-rise Ken is building. Yes, worked day and night, but mostly at night, the shorter one said. I heard, Did you see the rock on her finger? It's huge. I wonder if her husband knows how much she dissembles for business development. She says her husband is a computer nerd and is out of the country a lot. Maybe he doesn't mind. Some guys like their wives being entertained by someone else. They were next in line, so I didn't hear more as they moved to the appetizer bar. Susan wasn't at our table, so I started looking around. She was the only woman in a group of 4 men who circled her like wolves. I squeezed into the circle with our drinks, getting dirty looks. Here's the wine you asked for, dear. She looked stunned that I had invaded her territory. She introduced me half-heartedly to her friends, who seemed to view me as just a computer nerd. A small, creepy-looking man said, Nice to meet you, Mr. Rogler. I'm Sales Kyung. Nice to meet you, Mr. Cohen. I understand you are the real estate man in town, I said, shaking his sticky hand reluctantly. Susan, Bob doesn't know much about real estate since he's in the computer business, she said, trying to belittle me. Susan, computers are for learning things. That's how I know Mr. Cohen's name, I said. The Grinch replied. Your wife mentioned you are a shrewd investor. Really? I didn't realize she shared my investment strategies, I said, throwing Susan a death stare. She busied herself with a thread on her arm. She only said she was surprised by how large your portfolio was, he explained. Guess I should guard my investments better to keep them private, I said, seething. The last thing I wanted was nosy people knowing my financial strategies. She doesn't share her affairs with me, so I hoped she'd do the same with mine. It was nice meeting you, but I'd like to dance with my wife now, I said. I set our drinks aside, grabbed Susan's hand, and dragged her to the dance floor. You better calm down or you'll ruin both your marriage and career. Act happy, or this night will be remembered for the wrong reasons. Be a professional, I hissed in her ear. Take 3 big breaths, wait 60 seconds, then smile at me and we can talk. Surprisingly, she complied. I didn't like you confronting me like that, she said. I know, but don't share my wealth details. I don't trust anyone else, including you, I replied. That shocked her. You don't really mean that, do you? How often do I lie to you? How often do you lie to me? I asked. Another shock to her. I've never caught you in a lie, she said, not addressing her own honesty. One of the men touched my shoulder and asked, Can I dance with your wife? I'm sorry, but tonight is special and we won't be dancing with anyone else, I said. He nodded and left. After a few songs, we returned to our table and had another drink. I didn't feel like staying any longer. I'm done here, Susan. Are you coming home with me or staying? I asked. I'm torn. This is my job and there are people I need to spend time with, she replied. But how will I get home? I asked sternly. Call a cab or Uber or get a room. You're a big girl. You make decisions every day. My decision is to come home. Your decision is what you will do here. I hope we both make the right choices, I said. She had a strange look as I kissed her engagement ring. I love you, baby, I said. I love you too, she replied. Mr. Pappas's microphone was in her purse. I texted him to let him know she was at the Hyatt and that we would soon get more information. He confirmed his equipment was in place and already collecting data. She didn't come home that night. It was nearing noon when she arrived via Uber, her dress wrinkled. She thanked me for being her husband and went upstairs to shower. I wondered, when did Hyatt rooms not have showers? I held my tongue as she said, I'd like coffee and toast and then go to bed if you don't mind. Placing toast with her favorite jam on her plate, I asked, What did you do after I left the dance? I danced with Dan Davis, the man you refused to dance with. He said you seemed nice. I talked to about 20, 30 people, making sure they knew I valued them, she said. She didn't say if she went to her room or someone else's, nor where she had breakfast. I'll find out from Mr. Pappas. We met at his office at 10 a.m. Monday. He offered me coffee, but I declined, opting for water instead. If you don't mind, Bob, I'll outline what we found in chronological order, starting from the first day. Using Susan's cell phone locator, we discovered she had lunch at Mr. Salesken's high-rise. Later, she went to the 14th floor to Dan Davis's real estate office, a subsidiary of Silas Cohen's company. We have no recordings from these offices yet. Here's a summary of our surveillance findings over the last 3 days. She told Dan Davis on the phone that she was disappointed in your participation at the Home Builders Convention and would rather be with him to eat, dance, and make love all night. She planned to pretend to be drunk and unable to drive home. Davis made a derogatory remark about you, and she cut him off, reminding him not to berate you because you are her husband and she's using him for business connections. In another call, she said, I've made up my mind. You need $3 million for the new condominium. By selling part of that center, I can get the money from Bob and become an investor. He probably has more money stashed away. Davis asked, Where'd that nerd get all that money? She replied, If he has $3 million, that's $3 million more than you. Let's put the divorce plan on hold until I find out his cash position. It might be better to stay married and control his money than to divorce and get half. At the convention, she told Silas Cohen you could fund the equity stake in the mall. After you left the dance, she invited Davis to dance, saying, Bob has gone home, but he may have someone watching. We have to be careful. This will be our only dance tonight. I'll get a room and call you after midnight to come to my room. Mr. Rogler, I'm not going to replay or repeat your wife's conversations with Davis after midnight or the next morning. They're not something a husband should hear. They are your property, and you've paid for them. But I'll keep them in case you want to reconcile and listen to what she thinks of you. Do you want to continue the surveillance this week? Slowly, I said, Please continue the surveillance for the next 2 weeks, and then stop. I want to listen to the recordings, but understand your advice. Thank you for helping me stay sane and focused on my future. I closed all my IRAs, knowing Robert Rogler would pay taxes on the withdrawals and capital gains from the Merrill Lynch account. I changed the beneficiary on my life insurance to the Wounded Warriors Project. I maxed out joint credit cards to buy Krugerrands and traded my Corvette for Bitcoins. As Robert, I signed a power of attorney for Tyler Connors. I emptied and closed my safe deposit box, transferring funds from the Swiss bank, IRA, and Merrill Lynch to another account in Grand Cayman, leaving some money in the joint account. I moved all valuables from the weapon safe to the vault, leaving a flat box containing $1,000 and $20 bills with tear gas bait money. Susan would get sprayed with tear gas if she took it. I left the weapon safe combination on a piece of paper. Susan subtly tried to convince me to invest in the mall. I told her to prepare a full analysis of the deal, keeping her busy while I finished my plans. I decided to relocate to Scottsdale, Arizona. I contacted a realtor for a 4,000 square foot Adobe-style home with a pool, mountain views, and a golf course for about $3 million cash sale. I no longer felt love for Susan, only a desire for revenge. I decided to get away for a few days, telling Susan I had to go to D.C. for work. Instead, I booked a flight to Phoenix to buy a new house. Susan didn't offer to drive me to the airport, likely confirming my departure for her lover. I opened new bank accounts as Tyler Connors and transferred $4 million, $3 million from the Swiss account, and $1 million from Grand Cayman. I bought the perfect house and arranged for the realtor to store some items securely. I monitored our house via motion-activated cameras and saw no sign of a lover. Susan was working on a shopping center prospectus for me. I returned to Chicago with a smile, my plan in motion. Susan was waiting for me at the airport in her Audi. "Welcome home, my wonderful husband. I've missed you," she said. "Yes, it's been a long trip," I replied. Early the next morning, I quietly got dressed and left the house. I didn't want to see or talk to her. Mr. Pappas was glad to see me and had important updates. He recorded Susan visiting the Ken building, first Davis's office, then Mr. Ken's. In Cohen's office, Susan, Cohen, and Davis discussed using my money. Pappas said, "Ken is very successful in real estate but lacks liquid capital. He needs cash to avoid defaulting on loan payments, which could lead to foreclosures. Susan wants to be a real estate mogul and is using Ken as a springboard. If Cohen's empire collapses, she'll lose her chance and jeopardize her career since she made most of Cohen's loans." "Now for some unpleasant information," Pappas said, showing a short video of the meeting. It was hard to watch. "This is more than you need to see," he added. Susan came home at 6 p.m. and prepared dinner. She asked, "Would you like to review my prospectus tonight?" "Yes," I replied. "Would you like to present it or just have me read it?" "Let me have a whiskey and get comfortable first," she replied. She described the property well, with a low debt-to-equity ratio and solid net rental income. But I knew the anchor tenant was considering closing stores, which would hurt revenue. She added, "Cohen needs cash for a new luxury condo project. This is a great opportunity for us, with monthly cash flow and accelerated amortization. Let me look at the numbers tomorrow. I might want to invest more than the $3 million you suggested. Is that possible?" I asked. She was thrilled. The next day, I pretended to study the proposal, knowing it was a bad deal. I called her and asked, "Would you mind if I showed this to my overseas business acquaintances?" "Yes, please show it," she said, thinking it would improve the deal. I thought, better for us? Define we. Are we a couple or you and your lovers? I said, "I'll call my friends and see what I can do." She replied, "I totally love you." I mumbled a response and spent the morning loading valuable items into a rented Cadillac Escalade for the drive to Scottsdale. I called Susan and told her my friends liked the idea and I was flying to Phoenix to meet them. She was excited. She asked, "How much money do you think you can raise?" "I could risk another $2 million of my own, making $5 million total. Other participants might add another $5 million, I replied. "That would be perfect, Bob. Just perfect," she squeaked. I booked a motel room in Kansas City to rest on the long trip. I also hired a security company to watch over the car overnight. I bought a weapon safe of the same model as the one in Chicago and had it delivered to Tyler's new home. Sirius Radio was my companion, providing background noise. The trip went smoothly, and I gathered the bare necessities for the house. It felt good to be away from Susan and her schemes. A week later, I returned to Chicago and told Susan that I had secured a $10 million package for myself and my friends. I spent 2 weeks setting up an LLC and another 3 weeks preparing and negotiating the investment documents. The goal was to stall until Ken ran out of money. One morning before Susan left for work, I told her, "We're almost done with the paperwork. We could sign as early as this week, but the deal won't finalize until the funds are in your bank. I want to discuss our future. I think you should stop working so hard for others. Focus on our investments and enjoy life. Maybe even consider having children. What do you think?" "I like it, Bob. It would be great for us." "Thank you," she said, leaving the house happy. Later, I learned she went straight to Ken's office and celebrated with Davis and Ken. The next week, I signed the final papers at Cohen's office. Everyone congratulated each other, with Davis and Cohen smirking at me. Ken asked, "When's the money coming?" "We'll transfer all the funds from my account in Switzerland to your bank in one go. It should arrive soon," I replied. I left for the Middle East the day after signing the documents. The money transfer would happen while I was out of the country. Robert Rogler left America for good, the last trace being a passport stamp at O'Hare International Airport. Back in the Middle East, I checked the security cameras at home. Susan was in bed with Davis. I set off the fire alarm, causing chaos. The fire department spent an hour trying to locate the source. Because of the time difference, Susan and I kept missing each other on FaceTime. When we finally connected, her tone was cold. "When is the money coming? It's been over a week since the document was signed," she growled. I laughed. "The money is deposited in my account, ready to transfer to the U.S., but the banks here are closed now. I'll send it tomorrow when they open. What else is going on?" "Oh, nothing, just work. I'm busy, so I gotta go. Love you," she replied. "Yeah, me too. Bye," I said. It was the night Robert Ragler died. It was the perfect time for her to be alone in the house. I switched one of the emergency fire lights to strobe mode and had a speaker ready in another room. I turned on the strobe light and she jumped up from the bed. Then I said loudly, "Susan, Susan, help me. They're eliminating me. Please help me. No, 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 no. I love you, Susan." Then the lights and microphone went out. Silence. She was hysterical, screaming, crying, and sobbing, barely able to breathe. She rushed to the phone and called Davis. "Dan, something's happened. I've completely lost my mind. Bob was being liquidated and they were calling my name. It wasn't a dream." I got out of bed and was walking down the street when I heard it. "I'm so scared. Can you come here?" she pleaded. "I'm a little busy right now. Since it was a dream, it's no big deal." "Have a glass of milk and go to bed, you idiot," he replied. Just then, my phone rang. It was her, and I didn't bother answering. Instead, I smashed Bob's phone into pieces. Susan had no other way to contact me, no contacts at all. She was blindsided and alone. What would she tell Cohen? Where was the money they promised her? None of them knew the other parties in this deal except Bob. Without that $10 million, the Cohen conglomerate would collapse. I watched her sprawled in a large puddle on the living room carpet. Her plan to create a real estate empire had failed. She would likely be fired from the bank and lose her sources of income. Her bank salary didn't cover her lifestyle. Bob's money did. She had $1 million house, but it was in both our names, and without Bob's signature, she couldn't sell or mortgage it. She could live there, but it was an expensive house with monthly taxes, utilities, and insurance. In Illinois, you can declare a person dead after 7 years of no contact, or 12 weeks with proof of pass away. Documented events like an airplane crash or a massive fire are needed. Neither the U.S. Army, Marines, nor the Iraqi government will issue pass-away certificates. Bob asked his CIA supervisor to freeze his personnel file and deny any CIA contact with Robert Rogler. Under the pretext of protecting his family from insurgent retaliation, Robert Rogler would cease to exist. Tyler Connors would take over Bob Rogler's position. Susan would have to wait 7 years to sell the house. She didn't have the codes to Bob's offshore accounts. The only money she had now was from the bank. I hated to part with the $1 million house, but I was still going to lose at least half of it in the divorce. The remaining $500,000 was a big price to pay for leaving. I watched the drama over the next few days while she hoped Bob was alive. Now we were ready for the final act. Like many other servicemen overseas, their wives and girlfriends often cheated on them. When my Marine buddies found out about my problems, they asked if they could help, strike someone up. I, on the other hand, wanted something more lasting and fun for myself. The funniest part was that she had no idea I knew she was a strumpet, and that I orchestrated the entire collapse of her career and friends until she was pushed out of the house. I laughed at her impending financial crisis. We went outside where we couldn't see our compound and set up 2 tables, covering them with a blue tarp. One Marine, dressed in tribal clothing, took an AK-47 from the weapons room and placed it on the table. I sat between the tables with only my head above the blue tarp that was wrapped around my neck. Chalk had been applied to my face to make it gray. My lips were painted dark blue and my hair was salted. Ketchup was splattered all over the table and around my neck. It looked like I had been decapitated and the rebel was holding my head so it wouldn't roll off the table. We took several pictures from different angles and decided that the best one was a straight shot with my blue eyes staring point blank. The Marines decided it was the perfect reprisal for me. 3 weeks later, 2 Marines came to Susan's house and knocked on the door. Davis opened the door and said, "We've already given the money to the Salvation Army," and started to close the door. The closing of the door was interrupted by a size 11 shoe. "We're here to see Mrs. Robert Rogler about her husband." Susan said, "Please come in." The Marines were in dress uniforms but without name tags. My Marine buddies and I watched everything through the security camera. "Are you Mrs. Robert Rogler?" one of the Marines asked. "Yes," Susan replied. "We have a picture of an American liquidated. We think it might be your husband. This is our only method of identification since we can't get DNA from the photo," the Marine explained. She gasped and turned pale. "Okay, let me see the photograph." She immediately started sobbing. "No, no, no! Why him? We were going to start a family and let me quit my job. He called out to me the night he died. He told me he loved me. How can I live with myself knowing what I did to him? Where are the rest of his body parts?" she asked, gradually stopping crying. 30 bodies were dumped in a pit and bulldozed. The heads are stacked in a large pile outside the compound, the Marine said. She began to vomit while sobbing uncontrollably. I wasn't sure if it was because she loved me or because of the impending financial collapse she knew was coming. "We're sorry to have such bad news for you. Would you like us to call someone for you?" the Marine asked. "No, thank you," she sobbed as they walked out. One of the Marines picked up the picture and put it back in his briefcase. Across the block, they laughed at the part they'd played in bringing her down. Her husband had abandoned her and kept all his money. As they got into the car, they heard Davis yell, "Where's our $10 million? What happened to the $10 million? How do we get our $10 million? We're all going bankrupt without it."